Well, good afternoon again, everyone. This is Todd Nelson, the host of Transition 30 Extra, and I am being joined by Keith Cassant, my co-host. He has graciously decided to be able to help us in these, and we're excited to welcome you to another edition of this Extra. Um, the the guest that we have on the show, Eric Horton, is somebody that I think you'll really find a lot of value in what he shares. So we're excited to get right to it. But I wanted to take a moment and just introduce myself. I'm a financial advisor and that I specialize in helping transitioning service members and veterans in helping to navigate their career, their second career, their VA, TSP, all of those things. But I'm joined by Keith Cassant, who is a 22-year Army veteran, retired in 2019, now living with his wife and four children in the Virginia Beach area. Two of his children are active duty military. And so passing that along to the next generation. And in 2023, Keith took on the job at CISA, if I'm saying that correctly. And he's in charge of or a part of the outreach and employee experience team, essentially bringing veterans into that space that CISA is meeting for our critical infrastructure here in our country. So Keith, thanks so much again for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's always great to be here, Todd. Thanks for having me.
And I am going to take credit because at some point you're going to start seeing more of the bearded wonder of truth bombs. And yes, that was me. So when the royalty checks, when they start rolling in, I'll know who to thank. So
checks is in the mail, right? That's your phrase.
That's it. That's it. The check is in the mail. And then I also want to go ahead and introduce Eric Horton. He is a good friend of mine here in Tennessee. He's a 26-year Army veteran. Spent a good part of his second career in the Department of Labor Workforce Development Initiatives for the state of Tennessee. Essentially, his whole role was connecting Fortune 50 companies here in Tennessee with military transitioning service members and veterans. And he and his wife and two girls live here in the area, and just really excited to have him share his experience and some great tools that he has utilized. Eric, thanks so much for joining Keith and I.
Yeah, thanks for having, as usual, Todd. You've been a good beacon for a lot of us out here in Tennessee, so thank you.
Yeah, we've got a great veteran community. Eric, we won't. He may touch on this a little bit, but is one of the founders of LinkedIn Music City, and just a lot of great things going on. That's what I love about Tennessee is the veteran friendly environment going on. So Keith, let's go ahead and dive right in and let's find out from Eric about bridging the gap.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, great to be here. Great to have you on, Eric. Like I said, we crossed paths digitally once before, but I mean, I've heard your name for a hot minute now out there in the transition community. And you know what you were doing is such an incredibly valuable resource. Something I wish I had my hands on when I was transitioning out about 4 years ago. So, and I've even, sent you a couple digital cups of coffee and provided some of those same resources to folks that I'm talking with. But all that to say, so, I mean, being a service member, just tell me a little bit about how you came to be where you're at, doing what you're doing, and how that all came to kind of fruition.
Well, and thank you, man. And again, there's nothing really special about what I ended up experiencing in transition that every other veteran that goes through. I just try to look at something a little bit different for me, which was number one was tell the story that it's pretty common of what I went through. Whether it looked like success on paper, it wasn't successful inside. And so I really wanted people to kind of look at things a little bit differently. But initially, it was just me telling my story, which was it sounds great to do 26 years in the Army and have I actually ended up having 13 job offers before I even left service. And then I just picked and chose which one I wanted based off of the salary. And that's kind of when things started to go a little bit wrong. And that's where I started looking at things differently and said, man, I wasn't on an island by myself. It's really more common, in the past 6 years that I've been retired, I didn't really realize how common it was and how it didn't matter the service and it didn't matter the rank. I had a different ignorance on, only enlisted were impacted by transition stresses, when the reality of it is I was finding out W5s and O6s and O7s in some cases, were running into massive, disconnect from the realities on the ground. And then, working with Department of Labor just opened my eyes even further that there is a science behind getting employment and what employers do and what we assume is going to happen because of our service. It really was things that I kind of started to think about and trying to share as much as I could, not just from a personal perspective, but also from a professional perspective, that there's a lot we just don't know. So,
Yeah, no, that's yeah, and that's so much truth spoken right there, right? Yeah, there's a lot of assumptions out there, and even some of them are, there's some truth to them, kind of thing, as far as things you mentioned about, yeah, bridging that gap and everything. So with that, I kind of want to dive right in, right? So, transition 30 extra. So, we've given you 5 minutes in the past to crash course, into what you buy to transitioning service members and veterans. But with that said, go ahead if you could, and this is your opportunity to just kind of do a deeper dive into that. I'm going to kind of give you the floor for a little bit.
yeah. Well, and thank you for that opportunity too, man, because what I quickly realized was there was a huge disconnect between what we assume we have to make when we get out, but also what we think we have to earn when we get out might not be real, dependent upon the local situation of employment, right? And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is, if you're an E9 getting out of Fort Campbell, but you're going to stay in Clarksville where a population is around 190,000 and it's heavily driven on manufacturing. Well, if you're a retiring, 30-year E9, you're already well over six figures. And so the chance of you replacing that income and staying in Montgomery County is very, it's like winning the lottery. And so I started looking at that from how can I paint a better visual that puts people at ease, but also helps them figure out the realities of what they need to earn, and then make some better informed decisions along the way of it as well. Like, SBP, what does that look like out of the paycheck? Because their mindset is I'm earning this on active duty. And then, oh my goodness, there's going to be a fiscal cliff the next month when I retire, and I'm not going to get paid on the 1st and 15th. I'm going to get paid once a month. How do I start preparing for that? And then I took at that, I looked at that whole scenario and I said, how can I paint a better visual for people to make a better informed and peaceful decision? And then also make a better informed decision that's going to impact their families. And so then I created the gap calculator essentially. And what it does is, and I'll start sharing the screen now. And what it does is it paints a very good image of, what you're making while you're on active duty. And it's not rocket science. Like the Army tells you, DOD tells you exactly what you need to earn, and they tell you exactly what you've been earning. And so what I ended up doing was ultimately was creating this visual that says, and I created them and I'd done every pay grade, and I have the gap calculator dropped in a shared drive that I freely share out to everybody. And I'll show you step by step what I actually end up doing with it. But in this scenario, one of the common things is if you're an E7 at 20 years in the Army, you're getting out at Fort Campbell. Well, this is exactly what you're earning while you're on active duty. And then this is exactly what happens the next month when you retire. And that's a $66,000 gap. And so when somebody says, hey, I'm going to get out and stay in Fort Campbell in Clarksville, I need to be replacing this, but I don't get BAH, I don't get BAS anymore. And I still got to pay taxes on the retirement pension. And so when they start looking at that and they say, holy crap, like I'm not going to be able to find a job paying $100,000 in Clarksville. Well, then the next question is, where can I go to make $100,000? And they're going to have to commute to a community that can support wages and technical capabilities but it's also a good way for you to kind of soul search on what does that look like for you? What are your true capabilities as well? And it's a really easy part of that process to build this gap calculator. And when I say it's really easy, it's essentially as easy as going through and every year, and I have it in the share drive, but everybody can do this. I kind of put step by step, which is your pay grade. So in 2024 as an E7 on the pay scale, this is exactly what it has you making. And I'll go right over here. And that's the pay scales. And I usually have all these screens up at the same time. And so I say, all right, E7 at 20 years, that's what the salary is. So I go back down over here. I plug in the salary, January, February, because it coincides with the year. And whatever month you're going to retire out of in that fiscal year, you just make sure you add your 36 months, but it goes back 4 years because you need to get that high 3 that you need. And so then I say, all right, well, I'm retiring in 2024, but I still need to know what 2023's pay scale for an E7 at 19 years, 2022's pay scale for an E7 at 18 years, and then 2021's pay scale to get an E7 at 17 years. So I can get that high 3 calculation, which is right here. And the other part of it was the years of service. And so again, it was really easy to create something, based off of, your rank, your years of service, and your years of service dictates exactly what percentage that you're a part of that high 3. So if I was to change this to 22, you would see right off the bat that the percentage would change right here to 55. So it's a really easy part of the process. But in this case, we're going with 20 years as an E7. I've already done the homework on what 23, what 22, what 21 looks like, because I can go back over here to DFAS and I can actually pull up the historical years. I'm sorry, the historical years that what I needed to do. Now, what I did also in the share drive that I actually have all the pay scales already laid out. And I do this every single year. I update a couple of different things. I drop the new pay scales for every year so they don't have to go and look at the archive if they don't want to. And so, as you can see in here, I put typical, 3, 4, 5s, roughly based off around their years of service. But these are already created for them, whether officer and enlisted, because when you start going through, obviously BAH and BAS is different. And so you just got to plug and play only the yellow highlighted items, and everything else is automatically calculated for you. And to go so far as these are the exact rates at 2024 for what a 50% from VA disability pays out, 90% and 100% based off of their categories. So when you change these, like if you're single or if you're married, or how many dependents you have over and under that's specific to you, then once you do all that, and then automatically generates this right here. And the other big part of this was if you're going to get a VA compensation, instead of your mindset saying, oh my gosh, I'm separating from service, I need to make 100,000, the gap from your active duty pay, nothing else. It's really easy to see exactly what your SPP contribution is. It's easy to see the IRS calculations as well. And that's something else that I put into right here. This is what your retirement pay is. Using NerdWallet, I just did it a little bit earlier as well. So it tells you exactly what your retirement taxes are. This is what retirement taxes that you're paying while you're on active duty. And this is just based off of the IRS's already predefined definitions for those brackets, right, up to a certain amount of income. And then once it generates that for you, then you can say, all right, well, if I get a VA compensation of 50% because of my service, then my gap is only 54,000. And then on and on. So if there's 90%, if there's 100%, you see that your gap quickly goes away. And so what I noticed was, there was two problems that people were having. One was an unrealistic understanding of what the local job market is. And then also, how much do you really need to earn? And that would put people's mind at ease tremendously, because then they would say, you know what, I was being med boarded out. I already know that I'm going to be 100% from the VA, multiple surgeries, whatever the case may be. You know what? Well, can you find a job that pays 16,000 to be above where you're at before? And then you can see that now they're taking a sigh of relief, right? Because then you could say, all right, well, can you find a job paying 54,000 in Middle Tennessee? Absolutely. So where you need to be at is anywhere above this number, but getting to that number, it's so easy because everything that the DoD does with us has already been outlined by what the BAS is, what the BAH is, what our SBP contribution is, and how we navigate that piece, to make better informed decisions. And so that was kind of exactly the intent of what I was trying to accomplish. And and like I said, it's really easy, open book of how do I get this numbers and how do I get these processes, because I just go straight to the websites, right? I go to whatever the BAH is for your location is really easy for you to find by your rank. And I just did it for here. And I put the links into that gap calculator so everybody can go to the exact same link. So when you just open up, these 4 areas for you, then it's really easy plug and play. It used to take me about an hour where I would sit down with somebody and actually say, you're retiring '05. When did you get promoted from '05 to '04? When were you in '04? Because that also makes a huge, contribution to this. Because if you're filling in your DFAST pay scale and you were, in this case, let's say you're an E6 in 2021 and you got promoted to E7 in 2022, that's going to change the pay scale for what you do. So that's the reason why I kind of dropped everything on that one. So it's just make it as easy as possible for you to do. And there's no guessing in any of this. It's all very finite and definitive in how you reach the data. And it's really user friendly. Each one of the links clearly shows where to get the items to plug in, but the specificity of it for you determines on what year you got promoted and what year you're retiring and what month you're retiring in. So you can get that 36 months. Those are already calculated. So everything in the yellow is what you fill out. But this right here, it's not yellow where you fill it out. It's automatically calculated, but I just really wanted people to see that SBP piece, because that just helps you make a better decision on what you can, get, or make a better informed decision of later.
Yeah, and Eric, I am gonna have you leave that screen up because a couple of things to note. Number one, you had mentioned that this is on a share drive, and in the comment section of this of the extra video, we're going to go ahead and drop in that link where they can go to that share drive. But I want to draw attention to the fact that you did all this for free, and if you want to be able to pay back a little bit, Eric does have a Venmo on there, PayPal. I know he's at a position where he has said you don't have to pay for it, but obviously there's a ton of work, and this is such a huge value drive. I want to make sure that people at least know that, and we'll make sure that we drop those in the links as well. But Keith, do you have any follow up, or I know we're at the end time of our video, but to me, this is such a huge tool in any transition service member's toolbox to be able to take some of that anxiety out of the equation.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to everything. I could sit on this call for another hour and go down these rabbit holes, but no, this is such an amazing tool. Again, I would have loved to have had it. I kind of did something similar, but I actually did it not only kind of, but I even went, I was like, what do I need to make just to pay the bills, right? And that was how I kind of relieved some of my stress. I mean, this is the break even, which, yeah, phenomenal information to have, but maybe even like encourage folks to, what I occasionally will encourage folks to do is do like a zero balance budget, like take vacations off there, take that out, take eating out of there. Like, what do I need to make just to pay the bills, keep the lights on, insure the vehicles, keep them fueled up, that kind of thing. And for me, even without knowing my VA disability rating or anything else, for me, I was like, it was like a little under 40K. I'm like, that was a huge stress relief, because I'm like, I can fairly confidently find a job making 40K, And then
Sure.
obviously, down the road, yeah, everything else is gravy on top of that. So no, this is amazing stuff. I highly encourage anybody watching, yeah, definitely reach out to Eric. Check out his materials, and then it sounds like he's more than happy to jump on a call with you and even do a deeper dive. So like I said, I could definitely do one, keep this thing going for another hour, but I know we're out of time.
Well, and I will say, we're going to drop everybody's information in the comment section. So that as you're watching this on demand, that you'll be able to go back and connect up with any of us on that. But Eric, do you have anything last closing thoughts that you have?
None that I can think of, but don't rush to define your worth by a number, right? And that was another huge personal experience that I had, right? I felt I had to earn $100,000 a
Right.
year or more because that was payment for my experience and recognition of my service. And that's just not the way that real world workforce development works. Like, geographical locations determine salaries, and industry moves according to what those salaries and the local, it just, unfortunately, we get caught in the crosshairs with it, but the number does not define your value.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, Eric, you sharing a story about folks that, of course, are coming out with their VA evals high because their backs and their knees and all they got beat up during their service, and then they make the mistake of chasing that six-figure paycheck in a company where they have to walk cement floors, 14, 18, 20 miles a day, and they quickly realized that physically they just aren't able to do it, but they thought that was the answer to their problem because they were chasing the paycheck. So I think there's huge value in this, and I really appreciate you taking time to share this with you. And on behalf of the whole Transition 30 network, I appreciate you, Eric, joining. Keith, as always, thanks for jumping on. These Transition 30 extras, I think, are going to be a huge benefit, huge value. So both of you fellas, great connecting with you. Eric, I owe you a Cracker Barrel. And Keith, when you're in the area, man, I need to get some beard growing tips from you. So
Rock on.
all right, fellas. Well, thanks so much. We'll see you on another episode.
Thank you
Have a
all.
good one.
All right. Bye-bye.